few weeks ago, my government told me it couldn't afford to help me further my education. I'm disabled, as all of you guys know. There's a program that was going to pay for my master's school and schooling further. But not just me, thousands of disabled people across the country from the beginning of their academic career all the way up until a doctorate. They called me one day and they said the money's gone. The same government that just found $50,000 a year for each household of the richest 1%. Yes, $50,000. Same year, same law, same set of choices. They had the money. They just decided that who was going to go for it. And I did not meet the qualifications. But let's back up a little bit. Let's say exactly what happened and let's talk about the details and why the details matter. The program is called Vocational Rehab, Voc Rehab for short. It's simple. It helps people with disabilities get the training and schooling we need to further our education, to work. You're helping somebody get a skill. You're helping them get a job, pay taxes, to build a life of their own. Everybody wins. It's the most basic, decent thing a government can do, and governments all over the world help in these kind of fashions. I was approved. I was in. I was setting up all my classes. I was setting up my schooling to further my education. Back in the day when I first went to school, my focus was not education. It was wheelchair basketball and socializing. Luckily for me, I was talented enough at wheelchair basketball to get a full scholarship to go to University of Alabama. Vocational rehab, it did help. It helped pay for my books. It helped offset some of the scholarship. It was instrumental in me being able to go to school out of state and do something that nobody in my family prior to that had ever done, and that is receive a higher education. This was not the phone call I was expecting as I was trying to go back to school to work on something more. As you guys know from other videos, or if you don't, my goal is to eventually be a professor. I would like to be a doctor of history. It's something that is a passion of mine. It takes time, but more importantly, it takes money, and that is the exact funding that we are losing. So here's the part that stuck with me a little bit. I'm just a name on a very long list. In my state alone, there are 2,600 people who have been found eligible for this exact program who are sitting on a waiting list, approved, qualified, just waiting. And in some states now, every single category is closed. We could go into the different categories on what vocational rehab presents itself to help people. We're not going to do that today. We will touch on little bits and pieces. I encourage you to look it up. But there's different categories for different disabilities for how independent a person can be is related to the money that they will get. But for example, some of the states that have already closed this are Colorado, Idaho, Oregon, Washington, and Wisconsin. Doors now shut. So my first thought when I was talking to my advisor was tough budget year. I know everybody is feeling it across the world, and we're in the beginnings of a recession. Everything costs more, and disability services, along with any service, they need taxpayers to fund it. They need to be able to put that money towards and find the people with disabilities that they can help. But then the more I looked into it, the more that I came to try to educate myself, as the world would say, I saw that the money wasn't tight. It was just not being put into those areas. There's a law that passed last summer. The official name is the One Big Beautiful Bill. And that one law does two things at once that I want you to hold side by side. On one side, it cut Medicaid spending by about 12%. Medicaid is the single biggest source of money for disability services in the country. It's the funding that underneath the programs like vocational rehab. You cut that, then the states can choose what they do with their money. It's the funding underneath programs like the one that was supposed to send me to school. Cut that, and the states start closing doors, and they start building wait lists. On the other side, the same law handed tax cuts according to Congress's own nonpartisan scorekeepers. The richest 1% of the Americans get a tax cut worth about $50,000 every year. The top 10%, more than $14,000 a year. It cut taxes on big corporations, foreign profits by $167 billion. It cut the estate tax so the heirs to the biggest fortunes in America keep more. This was never about if we can afford it. We had the money. We just sent it to the people who need it the least. And this is something that is becoming more of a trend I'm seeing in America. We've always had issues with this, the rich getting richer, the poor getting poorer. But it seems like we're going backwards, and we've made so much progress, and now we're going the other way, and the money is being funneled into the richest few, and that gap is just growing and growing. And if you think that the average person is getting left behind, I just want you guys to take a step back and realize, what do you think the average disabled person is dealing with? There's many jobs that people like myself cannot do, good paying jobs that we will never be able to do physically, from garbage man, construction worker, steel worker, union jobs. So to be able to afford the education to be able to go to the schools, to get the help that we need, to eventually provide for ourselves and pay taxes, to be part of the society and working together, takes a little bit of extra help. Not much, but a little bit extra. Imagine what $14,000 can do for a person like me in my situation for education, and how little it can do for a millionaire or a billionaire. They say working families actually got the biggest tax cut, but by percentage on a small income, that could be technically true. But we have to look at that word percentage, because in real dollars, the top 1% got a $50,000 a year bonus. A family in Medicaid got their benefit cut. The same official analysis says the richest Americans come out ahead and the poorest end up worst. That's not my opinion. That's the Congressional Budget Office. So when someone tells you everybody won here, ask them who won and how much and who paid for it. Quick thing before we keep going, this channel is brand new. We are all working together, trying to slowly build this up, trying to get a genuine start, and to see what resonates with the people and how we could reach more people. If you want this kind of story, you want it told straight, you want to get with as much facts as possible, uncomfortable, try to connect the dots to what's happening in societies and cultures all over the world, like and subscribe. You'll be one of the first people here, and I would love to have a conversation with you. Now, here's why I don't think my phone call was an accident, because cutting the money is only half of it. The other half happened the same week. Almost nobody covered it. And to understand this, we have to go back 27 years ago. Two women in Georgia and the Supreme Court case almost nobody talks about. Their names were Lewis Curtis and Elaine Wilson. Both had disabilities. Both were stuck in state institutions in Georgia. Even though their own doctors said they were ready to live outside the community, they needed support to do it, so Georgia kept them locked away. A group that often gets forgotten about is the disabled, and how common it was to institutionalize people with my situation. Situations, of course, much worse than mine: mental disabilities, worse off physical disabilities. But oftentimes we'd be cast away. We'd be put to the side. We'd be put into institutions, and we'd be completely forgotten about. And these two people set out to try to change this. So they sued. They sued the state of Georgia in 1999, and the case reached the Supreme Court. Ultimately, this is called the Olmstead versus LC. They won. The court ruled needlessly locking disabled people away in institutions when they could be living in their own communities and working in their own communities, building their own families, was discrimination, and it's illegal. To feel why this mattered, you have to get to know what came before this. And most of American history, we don't talk about this. But if you were disabled at the wrong time in American history, which wasn't long ago, 1960s, for example, there were places like Willowbrook. If you have not heard of Willowbrook, I encourage you to YouTube or Google this institution. This institution where the workers there found it strange that so many people with mental disabilities acted different than people with the physical disabilities, as they would loop and put them in together without understanding that a physical disability does not ultimately mean a mental disability. And a mental disability does not mean a physical disability. But we were new. We were new to understanding this. We were new kind of people on this planet. Medical advancements have made it possible for people like myself to live, to get into the teenage years, to get into adulthood. And we still did not know quite what to do. Ultimately, when this place was found out about and was investigated, what they discovered and saw was heartbreaking, to say the least. And I'm sure that you guys can go into the details yourself and the stories, but it's horrific. Overcrowded, filthy, people warehoused out of sight, out of mind, and forgotten, oftentimes by their own family. Anyone who lived through that era will never forget it. And I know when I was growing up in the disabled community, my people, as I would call them, warned us about this. My people explained why this is important and why independence was so important, using examples such as Willowbrook. Olmstead was a turning point. For almost 30 years, the deal in this country was you have a right to live in your community. You don't have to be a shutaway. The government's job was to help make that happen. It was to help the disabled people. I've always heard you could judge a country by how it treats the most vulnerable persons. And that is what the US was stepping up and doing. And Americans are getting the kind of home and community support, disabled Americans, that they could live a normal life, which is, I think, something so basic and so beautiful, that they just want to live a normal life, have a family, have a home, have a job, contribute to society, where oftentimes we're seen as inspirations when in fact We're just trying to live the very normal and basic life. Now, here's what happened the same week my funding story was playing out, and the timing for me was too perfect. 27 years ago, to the week of that ruling, the Justice Department quietly released a legal memo about Olmstead, and I need to be really careful and really honest about what it is, because this is where people tend to get it wrong. It's not a law. They're not overturning Olmstead. The rights today are the same as they were last week, and they will be the same next week. Olmstead still stands. So, what did it do? The government's own lawyers arguing that the famous part of Olmstead, the part understood for decades to mean states must provide community care, never really required that at all because the government would be oversight over this. They knew they had to put a certain amount of money on for that budget. Now, here's the tell. The memo itself admits in writing this is reading, quote, out of step with the common understanding of the decision within the federal courts. This is directly from that. They're saying, we know this isn't how anyone's read it for 27 years. We're doing it anyway. Now, what does that mean? Why does this matter if it's not law? Because the federal government is the referee. For decades, under presence of both parties, when a state tried to warehouse people, the government stepped in and they sued. The memo is essentially the referee walking out of the game, the signal that they are going to stop enforcing the rule, the law. That's what that means. So then, why would a state continue to do it? If that's the playbook, if you don't have to repeal it, because states have their own rights, they can do what they want with their budget. They have to have somebody watching over them. If there's nobody there, then you can start taking money and cutting funding from anywhere. And once you give states a chance and people a chance to cut funding for oftentimes people that don't have a voice or maybe overlooked or do not contribute as much to society, let's just be realistic for different jobs that we would have to do and our health concerns and being in our chairs all day long or different things that we each disability would need. If you have a chance to quietly cut that without actually cutting it or changing the law, then that's a sneaky way of doing it. But let's put this all together. Let's put all this together and come back to my phone call. On paper, I still have the right I had before. Nothing was repealed. The law stays. The law still says I belong in my community, working, going to school, building a future. But the money to do it, cut. My disability, I'm considered too able now. I could do it myself. The referee who enforced all these laws to help my people walked away. The rule's still on the wall. There's nobody there to enforce it. Now, this is just what it looks like for one person. It's just one guy here speaking, trying to further my education with how expensive education is in the world and doing it in a situation that is more unique than the average able bodied person. Multiply that by everyone on that list and how large the disabled community is, which is the largest minority group in the world, I would like to remind everybody. And at the same time, you're giving more money to the wealthiest few and money that could be huge. If I had $50,000 to go to school or $50,000 for my medical bills or catheters, things that my people need just to survive, instead of sitting in a bank account or buying something with it or a different tax break or the same old story every single time by every politician on both sides, it's exhausting. It's exhausting getting the same answer over over again while the same people just come up on TV, explain what we need to do for society, how we're planning on helping, and nothing ever changes. And the people that get cut first are my own people all the time. Whether you want to talk about any other group, the money, the money flows away from my people the fastest. And that is just the way it is. To have a world that's not accessible be made accessible cost money. It shouldn't. If you put a ramp and an elevator someplace, it helps everybody, but it is seen as costing money. And then to put in a little bit more money to help a person like myself get more educated, to be able to get to a different level of job where they can work to help society. Maybe their points of view can help society. Maybe my people could be teachers, educators, so kids could grow up seeing a different point of view from a person who looks different. I know we don't like to talk about it nowadays. We also do like to talk about it. We also like to talk about race and sexual orientation, everything, everybody for to look different. But it's good for education on all sides. Kids need to see this, and disabled people need to see that their lives don't end once this happens. This is a program meant to help people, and so many of my personal friends utilize this program to go to school and then did better themselves. it would amaze you with how many doctors I know from just the wheelchair basketball world alone that use programs just like this to continue their education, to, how I describe it, is balance out the world. We love to talk about equity. Well, here's equity in practice. This is making things fair for people that cannot go out and depend on their body to get them the paycheck to then further their education, or if they choose to go a different route, a non-college route, which is a great route, different trades that are not available to them. This is what equity is all about. So what's the whole job here? Pay attention. Don't let it stay quiet, because the entire strategy, the cutting, the not enforcing, all of it depends on one thing. It depends on us not noticing. The betting you won't see it. Let's go out there and prove them wrong. Like and subscribe, and let's have a conversation.